Several years ago, about 4 or 5 now, the time goes quickly, it was early in July, and I was just driving in the car and hit a bump and went, ow. That quickly led towards more ows as I realized that something was going on physically with my neck. So of course I went to a chiropractor, had it checked out, and it was decided that I definitely needed to get an MRI, which at the time, not only being a little claustrophobic, but having my neck pushed back like this for all that time and the pain shooting down the arms. I mean, I was literally in tears, just begging God to just take me, you know? It was painful, and eventually, well, from July, August, September, October, finally on November 11th, I had cervical spine fusion. Now, during the time leading up to it, many people were very well-meaning and well-intended in their thoughts and their prayers and just trying to offer, and, you know, just words of comfort. But you probably know, sometimes when people try to say something that is meant to be nice, it can turn out to be like, ooh, that doesn't feel that right. You know, a loved one dies, and the worst thing you can hear at the wake is, oh, well, she's in it was her time. She was in a better place. I mean, by better place, yeah, the timing, I don't know. But the worst thing that was said to me by many different people was, Father, you know, this is just your cross to bear. Your cross to bear. Throughout my whole ministry and life, when I've heard that being said, I'm thinking, say what? I mean, I'm sorry, but, you know, I don't consider pain and suffering to be a cross that's being carried and by myself, because I want to do that I want to go through this. You know, in today's gospel, we have this 3-part story about Jesus asking everyone, who do people say he is? Peter comes up eventually with the Messiah. He gets it right, A+ for once. And then you get into the next section where Jesus talks about what it means for him to be the Messiah, that he's going to suffer, and that he's going to die. And Peter, the word rebuke isn't even strong enough. He really let in on Jesus and basically told him off, like, you have no clue what you're talking about, Jesus. Of course, Jesus knew that his calling as the Messiah was not towards a conquering Messiah who would come in on horses with the cavalry and all of the swords and rescue the Jewish people from the occupation by the Romans. And he was very clear that Peter had set his mind on what he wanted. on earthly things, which is very common, because in our lives, most of our lives are spent thinking about, what do I want? Because only we live in our heads. And it's often, oh, well, what does that person want? That's not in the picture. It's usually about me, and my needs. And for Peter, it was about, he wanted Jesus to be that conquering Messiah. And so Jesus tells him off in front of all his disciples. But then he gives him and everyone some hope. And he says, if you really want to be my disciples, that means if you really want to be a follower of Jesus, the son of Joseph, the son of Mary, the carpenter, the one who has led people closer to God, that if you really and truly want to be that person, then you and me and the disciples need to deny ourselves and take up our cross and follow him. Hear that again. Deny ourselves and take up our cross and follow him. So how do we deny ourselves? What's Jesus expecting us to never enjoy life again, to never have another piece of chocolate? You know, I mean, it could be a different thing for everyone. But what I think Jesus is getting at is, we all know those things in our lives that separate us from God, from our fellow human, and from creation. According to the prayer book, that's sin. That which separates us from God and our neighbor. So if we really wish to be followers of Jesus, we need to work on those things in life that cause us to separate ourselves from God and others. Now, we're pretty good about doing that during Lent. But this project is something that is an ongoing, lifetime project. It never stops. Just when you think you got something down and you got it down right, you're like, think you got it. Think I got this. And then the next little temptation comes along and you realize that now I have to work on that. But when you are ready to do that, ready to go against what culture suggests, and culture suggests many things. Culture tells us that we're number one. Think of it. Be all that you can be. How many slogans start with about me? Or common culture says it's okay to defame and criticize others for the color of their skin. Culture sometimes even says that in our lives, if we see somebody hurting, that, oh, we already paid too much in taxes, we give money to the church, we'll leave that to somebody else to help. That's what our society, that's what the world, that's what the evil one wants us to do. But Christ wants us to bite our tongue and use our tongue for good instead of evil. Christ wants us to respect the dignity of every human being, regardless of where they came from or what language they speak. And Christ demands, as we know in Matthew 25, that we who are followers of Jesus will feed the hungry, will clothe the naked, will take care of the widows and orphans, will visit those in prison, will pray for the sick, and so forth. So once we have that down, then there is a gift. And that is then to take up our cross. You know, Jesus didn't say, oh, okay, Jeannie, I want you to pick up your husband's cross. Never asked you to do that, ever. Just like, Rick, you're not to pick up Jeannie's cross. We're only to pick up our own cross. And those are those things in life that bog us down, that prevent us from truly following Jesus. And yes, at times it can be heavy. We know from the Passion of Jesus when he had to carry the crossbeam himself that he fell not once, not twice, but 3 times. And Simon of Cyrene was called to help him to carry that beam. But when we carry our cross, we're saying to Christ, okay, Lord, I'm willing to follow you. Follow you to wherever it leads. So that not only may I experience the true joy and the celebration of what it means to be in witness of the glorious cross, but also then to help Christ as he carries his cross. So, today, you may be thinking that you're carrying a cross, and you think, oh, this is all that's going to be. But remember, it might not be your cross that you're carrying at all. It could have been somebody that put it on your side. somebody swapped it, or you inadvertently picked it up. Instead of picking up others' crosses, do what you have to do in order to be spiritually well. And that's taking care of your soul first. Because you cannot help lead others to Christ if your soul is broken and torn apart. Now, we're all going to carry crosses. They're all going to be a bit heavy and we may stumble. But let me remind you of something Jesus said. He said, take up your cross and follow me. He also said, take my yoke upon me and learn from me. For the load is light. He also promises that he will be with you and me to the very end of the ages. My sisters and my brothers, let's carry our crosses high today as a symbol of the fellowship of Christians that we are. And let us pray that the burden will be light, and that through carrying our crosses, we might also help others at the same time. To be not what the world wants, but to be who God wants us